Hey folks, it's a new unit. Welcome. So as per usual, let's write the date down. Let's write our names. Tara. That's me. Don't write Tara, that's not you. 2.1 Introduction to perfect squares and square roots. So a number squared is a number that is multiplied by itself twice. Now that's a lot of words. Let's see what I actually mean through an example. So if I were to say 4 squared, that's the same thing as saying 4 times 4. So remember when we have brackets beside each other, 4 times 4, the operation that goes between them is multiplication. And that is 16. I can also square decimals. 1.2 squared is just 1.44. So you can square anything. You can square whole numbers, you can square negatives, you can square anything. Now, a number is a perfect square if it can be written as 2 equal whole numbers. So if I were to say 36, is 36 a perfect square? Yes. Because 6 times 6 is 36. Or another way we can say it is 6 squared. One kind of little thing I want to change here though is this idea of whole numbers. Because you can have a perfect square that's a decimal. So if I were to put 1.69, it is a perfect square. Because 1.3 times 1.3 equals 1.69. So they're not necessarily two whole numbers because 1.3 is a decimal, but it's actually two rational numbers or two numbers that terminate. In some ways, these two things are opposite. We say a number squared is a number multiplied by itself twice. So 4 squared is 16. And we say that 36 is a perfect square because 6 times 6 is 36. A fraction written in simplest form is a perfect square if it can be written as a product of two equal fractions. So if I have something like 9 over 49. 9 over 49 just is 3 times 3 over 7 times 7. And we know from fractions that we can break them apart. So we can just say that 3 over 7 times 3 over 7. Another way we can see if a fraction is a perfect square is if we bring up our calculator and we actually just see if the answer is rational. So remember, rationals are repeating decimals, or it means terminating decimals. So let's see what this one is. 9 divided by 49 equals, and we want to find the square root of that. Now, at first glance, it kind of looks like it's a whole bunch of things, but look, 0.42857, 1.42857, 428, and this should be 5 because the 7 would make it round, so it doesn't go infinite. So since it can be written as the square root of it can be written as a fraction, that means that it is a perfect square. Now here's the last thing. The square root of a number is the value that must be multiplied by itself twice to produce that number. Oh my goodness, that sounds pretty crazy. But let's simplify it with an example. So if I said the square root of 81, I would say that it is 9. Because 9 times 9 equals 81. Another thing that we can do is take a square root of a decimal. So I can say the square root of 0.49. So just estimate first. Let's estimate first. The square root of 0.49. Some people are going to say it's 0.07. Some people are going to say 0.7. I say it's 0.7, but don't trust me. Let's look at the calculator. 0.49, the square root of it is 0.7, because 0.7 times 0.7 is 0.49. It looks kind of crazy with those decimals, hey? So I'm just going to quickly in the Q column just do this multiplication. 0.7 times 0.7. 7 times 7 is 49. But what I need to do here is I need to take into consideration how many decimal points there are. So I've moved the decimal points 1, 2. So that means from here I need to go 1, 2. So 0.7 times 0.7 is definitely 0.49. Example number 1. Calculate the number whose square root is 1.4 and 4 over 5. So that means that the square root of what equals 1.4? Let's just work a really easier example here. If I would say the square root of 36, I would say that the square root of 36 is 6. So if I were to say calculate the number whose square root is 6, I would say, that's 36, because 6 squared is 36. So what squared is, or the square root of what is 1.4? Or the other way of saying it is 1.4 squared is what? Well, let's find out. 1.96. So 1.96 is the number whose square root is 1.4. So let's do the same thing for B. The square root of 4 over 5, the square root of what is 4 over 5. So essentially what we're saying is 4 over 5 squared is what? Well, we're going to learn more about this in our exponential or our exponents and powers unit, but the exponent goes to both the numerator and denominator. So essentially my next step here would be 4 squared over 5 squared. 4 squared, 4 times 4 is 16. 5 squared is 25. So 16 over 25 is the number whose square root is 4 over 5. It gets to be a little bit crazy because it's like doing and undoing. It's like saying, what's the opposite operation to addition? Oh, it's subtraction. What's the opposite operation to multiplication? Oh, well, it's division. It's kind of like, what's the opposite of square rooting? Oh, it's squaring. So it looks kind of crazy. So if I would say 6 squared is 36, and I can say the square root of 36 is 6. If I do both of these things, if I square and then square root, I get to the same original number, 6.